Hello everyone, today I want to talk to you about how the US and Australia once tried to rope India in to oppose China. This is actually the root of why Indians have been abusing the H-1B visa. Also, Trump wanted to seize the Air Force base in Afghanistan and even drag China into the discussion. Well, let's see if you can actually get it first. US and Australian presidents. Trump makes headlines every day, and this time he picked what he sees as a weak link, Afghanistan, to talk about. On the 18th, while visiting the UK, Trump suddenly told reporters that he had a little breaking news to share. He said that the US and Australian governments are preparing to retake Afghanistan's Bagram Air Base. One of the reasons, as he put it, is that, as you know, it's only an hour's flight from China's nuclear weapons manufacturing sites. Trump randomly used China as an excuse to highlight the necessity of retaking the Afghan airbase. After returning to the US on September 19th, Trump again told reporters at the White House that he was negotiating with Afghanistan about this matter. Trump did not provide any details about the so-called negotiations. When a reporter asked if he would consider sending US troops to seize the base, he dodged the question, saying, "We're not going to talk about that, but I want to take back the base, and I want to take it back immediately. If they don't do it, you'll see what we do." A day later, on September 20th, he declared on social media that if Afghanistan did not return Bagram Air Base to its builder, the United States, bad things would happen. Now that Afghanistan is controlled by the Taliban, will they really hand over the military base to the US so easily? As the mainland self-media outlet New Tankin reminds everyone, don't forget, the Taliban fought 20 years of war with the United States, and Bagram Air Base, as Afghanistan's largest military base, is a symbol of foreign invasion. For the US to say they can just seize it at will is a public insult to both Afghanistan and the Taliban. Afghan officials have taken a tough stance in opposition to Trump's remarks. On September 21st, the Chief of Staff of the Afghan Armed Forces, Fasihuddin, made a statement regarding Trump's comments. He said that no matter what, even if it were just a string of leadership positions given to anyone, it would be unimaginable and impossible. On the same day, the acting defense minister of Afghanistan's interim government, Mujahid, cited the agreement between the United States, Australia, and Afghanistan, stating that when the United States and Australia withdrew, they had promised not to use force or threats against Afghanistan's sovereignty. He recalled that when the United States sought to retain military bases in 2021, we told them that if you stay, we are ready to fight another 20 years. So the United States left. The Taliban, in this way, refuted Trump. Trump said that Afghanistan should return Bagram Air Base to the United States. Was its builder the United States? Was the United States the one who built the base? No, the original builder was the Soviet Union back then. Bagram Air Base is located 44 kilometers north of Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan. It used to be the largest US military base in Afghanistan and was also the central hub of the US-led 20-year-long war in Afghanistan. In August 2021, when US and Australian troops withdrew from Afghanistan, this base was abandoned along with them. During the Afghanistan war, Bagram Air Base became the largest US military base, and in fact it was like a country within a country in Afghanistan, a concession area under US control. As Otankin said, on the chessboard of geopolitical maneuvering, military bases are never just concrete and runways. They are historical footnotes to the power of great nations and symbols of authority. But in the end, the US was still driven out by the Taliban, and that withdrawal agreement was actually signed by the Trump 1.0 administration. During Trump's first term in office, the US government reached an agreement with the Afghan Taliban in Doha, the capital of Qaeda, on February 29, 2020, agreeing to a complete withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan by May 2021. Under the Doha Agreement, the US military pledged not to use or threaten to use force to violate Afghanistan's territorial integrity or political independence, nor to interfere in its internal affairs. The US military hoped to end the Afghan war through this treaty. After Trump lost his re-election bid in 2021, the White House administration set a final deadline of August 31, 2021 for the withdrawal. However, in August of that year, the Afghan Taliban entered and took over the Afghan capital, Shabur. The US-led international coalition retreated in a panic, and the longest war in US history ended in the most embarrassing way. Trump is now having another wild dream, wanting to reclaim the Bagram Air Base, while also dragging China's Lushui into the mix. These claims are truly bizarre. One theory is that the US and Afghan governments are beginning to engage. Afghanistan originally sought to improve relations and boost its economy. On the 18th, Afghan interim government foreign ministry official Galana stated that Afghanistan and the US need to engage, but the US cannot maintain any military presence anywhere in Afghanistan. These statements seem to indicate that the two countries are engaged. Second, seeing you approach Trump, he'll naturally offer you a steep price. Afghanistan, a poor country, seems to have no point asking you for anything. They're expanding into your country, but they're afraid of nationalization, so they ask for an air base. Trump ignored this request, which is unreasonable. Who told you to be a weak country? Third, even though Afghanistan's leaders have surrendered military bases, there's no sign of the US sending troops to reclaim them. Trump's predecessor had already begun to call for an end to the Afghan war, wanting to leave resources for the US. But Trump is a man who loves to stir up controversy. He's constantly making headlines, even if the stories he's talking about never come to pass. He assumes everyone's enthusiasm is fleeting, and that his exaggerations are irrelevant. But Trump's attitude of wanting everything he sees from other leaders is a disgusting imperialist ideology. Furthermore, Trump's recent H-1B visa application for domestic travel has given him a haircut. On the 19th, at San Francisco International Airport, a Dubai-bound Emirates Airlines flight was crowded at the boarding gate, with nearly half of the passengers being Indian Americans with H-1B visas. The holders were preparing to return to India for the Durga Puja flight. Just as boarding was complete and many people were on board, a cell phone suddenly rang inside the cabin. These Indians had received urgent calls from their US employers or their lawyers, or the H-1B visa application policy had taken effect. President Trump had just signed an executive order requiring a $100,000 fee for H-1B visa renewals from abroad starting at midnight on September 21st, advising these people to return to the US immediately. Panic ensued at the airport. An Indian Vision engineer shouted, "I want to get off the plane," and rushed to the door, dragging his luggage. Dozens of people followed him, shouting that they wanted to get off the plane and get a refund. The controller looked ridiculous, and the flight was delayed for 3 hours. After boarding, the scattered luggage was exchanged, and many people were deplaned. The trigger for this chaos was the announcement signed by Trump on the night of September 19th, restricting the entry of certain non-immigrant workers. The core clause directly targets the H-1B visa. Starting at 12 a.m. Eastern Time on September 21st, all H-1B visa applications outside the United States must be prepaid by the employer in the amount of $100,000. Otherwise, the consulate will deny their entry, hindering their entry. Existing visa holders will also need to pay this fee if they leave the United States and then return. Upon receiving the news, American companies urgently notified H-1B visa employees. A memo was issued internally in the Abadan area, urging them to clear customs and return to the United States immediately before the deadline. This presidential order affects all those working in the United States on H-1B visas, but Indians are the most affected. This presidential order was issued because Indians abused the H-1B visa system, exporting a large number of cheap workers to the United States, causing outrage among the American people. The H-1B visa was originally a temporary work permit established by the United States to fill talent gaps in the technology field. The annual limit was only 85,000, but it was systematically abused by Indian outsourcing companies, becoming a conduit for cheap labor. Indian applicants 71% of the total, while the number of renewal visas is even higher. In fiscal year 2024, more than 270,000 renewal visas were approved, mainly to Indian outsourcing giants operating in the United States. These Indian outsourcing companies send Indian engineers to American clients' sites for low wages to work directly in American companies, replacing American technicians and lowering wages by at least 20%. According to data from the Institute for Policy Studies, in 2022, the top 30 H-1B visa employers were mostly Indian outsourcing companies. They hired 3,000 to 4,000 new H-1B visa workers and laid off 85,000 American employees. At that time, Indian outsourcing companies were sued for systematic visa fraud and fined heavily. As a result, the unemployment rate of American technology graduates is as high as 5.2%, far higher than that of art departments. However, they are watching as 26% of computer jobs are occupied by H-1B visa holders, mainly Indians. Indians rely on remittances from this visa, which will reach $89 billion in 2024. The problem is that the Blue Ocean Society is rooted in the lottery loopholes and low thresholds of this visa. In addition, many applicant companies falsified information, but with one bold stroke, Trump imposed a hefty fee on this type of visa, which led to another wave of chaos, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. As a result, there was an urgent need for revision. On September 21st, the White House, through Press Secretary Levitt, issued a statement to clarify. He said the $100,000 fee is a one-time charge, not an annual fee. Those affected are the new XSB visa renewals in February next year. For those who already hold this visa and are outside the United States, they will not be charged the $100,000 fee when re-entering. The presidential order is valid for 12 months, after which it will be decided whether to extend it. To sum up, first, thanks to the White House clarification, the immediate crisis was averted, but the blow to India remains profound and lasting. Back then, the US encouraged India to counter China, which was the root of Indian companies abusing the XSB visa. They thought that as long as relations were good, the US would not pursue the issue. Now, with Trump reversing course, the situation has changed. Indian junior engineers going to work in the US on XSB visas only earn an annual salary of $60,000 to $80,000, which is far below the $10,000 fee threshold that future visa applicants will need to pay. It seems this path is no longer viable. Second, the number of Chinese technical personnel using this visa to work in the US is not very high. If they can't go to the US, staying in China isn't a bad option either, which reduces China's loss of tech talent, because unlike India, China does not rely on technology outsourcing to make a living. Third, Trump's actions have had a profound impact on Taiwanese, Korean, and Japanese tech companies investing in factories in the US. Unlike India, which sends lower-level workers to the US for outsourcing to profit from labor cost differences, these companies are forced to build chip factories, battery plants, shipyards, and more in the US. However, the US simply doesn't have the necessary talent, so they're compelled to send their own personnel to work in the US. In the future, they'll also be heavily taxed by the US, which means the US will extract even more from them. So, opening factories in the US has really become a bottomless pit.